The title of this podcast is How to Make an Impact in Your Generation. I have some key points that I'm going to discuss in this podcast. Before I start, I'm recording this podcast at this moment in time from Tanzania, Zanzibar, Tanzania to be exact. And the purpose of this podcast is to be aspirational and inspirational, meaning I want you to be uplifted, aspiration, and I also want you to be inspired, inspiration, meaning I want you to be deployed. I want you to be uplifted and deployed by this message. I want this message to kindle in you a desire for more than what you already have, for more than what you already want, for more than you ever desired. How to make an impact in your generation. This is a question I have rarely heard anyone answer. And when young people ask me this question, because it's young people that ask me, and the question is not asked exactly the way the title is presented. It's asked in a way where they have a knowing for more, but they don't know how to articulate it because they're aspiring, because they're inspired to do something bigger than what they see in their generation, but they don't know how to express it. I'm here to answer that question. And I don't want you to think just because a young person asked the question that this doesn't pertain to people who are older or who may be older. This applies to all of us because in some form or fashion, we can all make an impact in our generation if we choose to do so. The first point is this: you must be in your direct generation, but not of your direct generation, to make an impact in your generation. Meaning, you must be in this generation, but not of this generation. There must be some qualities about you that set you apart. There must be some distinctive elements associated with your character or your gift that causes you to apply yourself towards a purpose that inevitably will remove you from the people who are in this generation, of this generation. Meaning, the people that are in the generation, they're like you. They have common values, common needs, basic viewpoints. But I want you to think in terms of being in the generation, but not of the generation. It's okay to have those viewpoints. It's okay to have those common elements where there's an understanding between you and those who are in your generation, but there must be something about you that makes you not of your generation, something that separates you. Point number 2. You cannot impact your generation if you're following the same path of your generation. One of my mentors told me this when I was younger. He said, Chris, look at what everybody else is doing and do the complete opposite if you want to do something impactful. You see, he was answering the question, how to make an impact in your generation, but he wasn't articulating in such a distinct way. That's usually how the question is answered, and it's usually how the question is formed. and framed. But I'm going to be direct because I took the advice serious. And I was in my generation, but not of my generation. Which is why I'm able to do this podcast and answer this question. The next point. Point number 3. People in your direct generation will know you, but you will not be known by your direct generation. So it begs the question. When you say your generation, you say direct generation, what do you mean? I mean, in your direct generation, that's when you're born. But as the years go by, other generations are going to be born as well. Now, you may not make an impact in your direct generation. The group of people that you were born with, you just happened to be born when they were born. You may make an impact in one of the generations that are born after you're born. So when you impact your generation, it's not your direct generation that has to be impacted, although some people are so great they're able to do so. But the point is, people in your direct generation will not know you. But you will be known by your direct generation. They won't know you because you're not doing the same things that they're doing. You're not thinking the same way that they're thinking. But as you start to separate yourself from your direct generation, they may not know you, but they will be known. But you will be known by them. The next point. Future generations will study you so they can understand you. When you have such unique qualities that your direct generation cannot know you, basically, future generations will have to study you so they can understand you. Because when you make an impact in your generation, you're usually doing something so distinctively different, thinking so distinctively different that you cannot be known, that you can be understood. And that's the next point. Great people are not known, they're understood. To be great, that means you have to be vast, broad, but have depth. Both are usually not characterized in one entity. That's why those who can be broad and have depth, they have to be understood. Because not only does their greatness expand on the surface, but it also extends to depths. That type of person is someone that needs to be studied, because you cannot simply have a conversation with that person and leave with a thorough understanding. The next point is this. Great people are known intergenerationally. Other people are known intragenerationally. Meaning, great people are known intergenerationally because they have done something in their generation that has set them apart from the other people who were simply born in that person's generation. The next point. If you are striving and working on a purpose that is bigger than your generation's purpose, then your purpose will be bigger than your generation. That will give you the intergenerational qualities that cause you to have such an impact in your generation that other generations will study your thought, your idea. You see, knowledge is light. Once it is released into the future, what happens is people in the future will hear it and they will study it. And then they will understand. Some will understand. Next point. Your impact will most likely be known in other generations. The next point. Great people are complex. Other people are complicated. I've done a podcast on complicated versus complex. Complex is more difficult, whereas complicated is easier, meaning in something that is complex, it usually has to be studied, but something that is complicated can be intuitively understood. The next point. Truth is understood over time. That is how the fake great are separated from those who are really making an impact and are really great. Meaning, the farmers look at wheats and tares. It's very difficult for the farmer to understand the difference between a wheat and a tare because as they grow together, they look the same. Until it gets to a certain point. You see, during the time of harvest, the farmer will know what is wheat and what is tare. And he'll remove the tare and he will keep the wheat. And those who make an impact in their generation, those are the wheat. Those are the people that live with substance. And because they live with substance, the future generations can use their gift, their knowledge, their ability to sustain themselves. Here's a little insight into my story. My mentor did not accept the ways of my direct generation. And when I would go to his home and he would have hours and hours of conversations with me, he gave me a way to see my generation outside my generation because I could see my generation through his eyes. You see, if you're in your generation, it's very difficult for you to see your generation. You are in your generation. But if you are outside of your generation or have a way to see your generation from the outside, then you can impact your generation because you'll be able to see what your generation needs or the future generations need because you're not involved with the festivities, the activities that are a part of your generation. You have the ability to be outside of it, to see it, so you can change it. Making an impact in your generation has something to do with conforming, then performing so that you can be transformed. I see it as conformative, performative, and transformative. The next point. I learned the values of the 50s and 60s, and I used them to make an impact in my generation. Meaning my mentor, his consciousness was from the 50s and 60s, He had already lived his life. He already saw trends and patterns and mistakes that he personally made and other people in his generation made. And he can see what it would take to be great, to make an impact in a young person's generation. And he was able to bestow that knowledge upon me. And he did so as a benefactor. He did so mercifully, because he didn't have to take me aside and have conversations with me. There is one thing that I remember him saying. He told me, there's two ways you can party. You can party with your friends in your youth, or when you're older, you can party with your family, and you can party anytime you want. I didn't understand what he was saying at the time, but nonetheless, I made the sacrifice and I focused on my purpose. From the time I was 11, I was selling candy door to door. I was the top salesperson on that team. The oldest person on the team was 19. From 11 until I was 19, I've either focused on sports, learning teamwork, and how to be a team player, or I focused on selling candy or delivering newspapers or selling newspaper subscriptions. At 19, I went to the military. But at 18, I met my mentor, and he mentored me from 18 till 27. From 19 till 27, I spent a greater part of 10 to 15, sometimes perhaps 20 hours nearly every day studying technology. From 19 until the present day, I've been so focused on technology that I was able to make an impact to transform my generation. That's a little insight into my story. Just to give you an understanding that my ability to impact my generation wasn't an accident. It was all on purpose. And I know my story can be like a movie or a book. And some people may listen to this and say, well, I'm not you. How can I do something that grand? Everyone's journey is going to be different. But because the journey is different, it doesn't neglect the higher order of a person's purpose. You don't have to have some unique, grand story. What you want to do is, you do want to have a unique, grand purpose. The next point. The biggest difference between the great and the others is this: pleasure or purpose. The people who want to make an impact in their generation, they choose purpose over pleasure. The people who do not make an impact, they will choose pleasure over purpose. The next point. We all face life challenges. It's easier to face them when focused on purpose, and it's more difficult when focused on pleasure. Because when you're focused on purpose, you're willing to learn, and during the way, there are pleasures. But when you're primarily focused on pleasure, the responsibility of purpose will make one feel unpleasant because they aren't able to participate in their pleasures. The next point. We're going to look at time and people. Invest your time. Do not spend your time. When you invest your time, You're taking consideration about the value of your time in the future. But when you spend your time, you're taking in consideration about your value in the present moment. How you use your time will determine how time views you. Meaning, how you use your time will be revealed by how people in the future view you. Time is important because time reveals results, and that is what future generations will see. Did your purpose stand the test of time? But the question may be, well, how do I stay focused? Character. Elements such as discipline, self-control, patience, values, virtues, standards, integrity. The next point. People. It's real simple. If you're a person of purpose, hanging around people without a purpose, they will make it their purpose to stop you from achieving your purpose. So how important is your purpose? And will you guard it? Not just from your haters, but even from yourself. Because if you take the understanding that I'm giving you in this study, you will truly have an opportunity to make an impact in your generation. But it's very important how you view time and people. Invest your time and guard your time from people who do not have your best interests in mind. Well, how do you know you're hanging around people with purpose? Great people talk about ideas. Other people talk about people. Great people will entertain ideas, different results that they can get from their ideas. Other people talk about what other people are doing. Usually, it's in a negative light because those people are usually talking from a position of fear. And those who do great things take risks and they overcome rejection. They overcome jealousy. They overcome envy. They overcome betrayal. They overcome because they look at all these challenges as a part of the maturing process. And in the maturing process, they learn, or they endure the pain, they learn, they know, and they grow, and they're able to teach. I've gone through the entire maturity process. And I suggest that if you're very serious about making an impact in your generation, put feelings to the side and learn and go through the process. It could be grueling, but in the end, it's worthwhile. Because in order for you to be great, you're going to have to endure the crushing, the shedding, the separating. And that's what it feels like, being set aside in your generation, living for a purpose and staying focused on that purpose. It takes patience, but time will yield results unimaginable. I go back to the purpose of this teaching, to be aspirational and inspirational. I hope that this teaching has uplifted you and ultimately will deploy you to make an impact in your generation.